actually to transition to some notable comments that Elizabeth Warren apparently made last week. I mean, she's in a similar bind here because it's become so undeniable the amount of atrocities that have been committed in front of us that, especially for Democrats, anyone who wants to preserve an image as any sort of humanitarian, they have to acknowledge that. And yet they still haven't shifted from all-out, full-throated policy support of Israel. So let me play these comments from her. She was answering a constituent question, I believe this was in Boston, about whether or not Israel is committing genocide. And she says, actually, yes, they are, that there is sufficient evidence, ample evidence, I think is the word that she used, that they will be found to be committing genocide by the International Court of Justice. Let's listen to her specific comments in response to this constituent.
Do you think that Israel is committing a genocide?
So I think that what's happening now is there's going to be a long and involved debate over what constitutes genocide when you ask a legal question. For me, it is far more important to say what Israel is doing is wrong. And it is wrong. It is wrong to starve children, women, a civilian population in order to try to bend them to your will. It is wrong to drop 2,000-pound bombs in densely populated civilian areas. I think I can make a more effective argument by describing the behavior that is happening and whether I believe it is right or wrong, and look people in the eye and say, do you want to tell me if you think it is right, and that it should be the policy of the United States of America to support those actions. So that's how I analyze this. No, I did analyze the question. I said
genocide, yes or no.
It was a yes or no. The second question was a yes or no question, to clarify.
So if you want to do it as an application of law, I believe they will find that it is genocide, and they have ample evidence to do so. What I'm also trying to tell you is I'm trying to get people past a labels argument, which seems to throw up a screen, and to get them to look at the behavior on the ground, to get them to look at the children, to get them to look at the mamas and the old people and the people who've been displaced and the people who are living outside and the people who are drinking dirty water, and talk about what the role of the United States is in connection with supporting the Netanyahu government, who has put the people of Gaza in that position.
So you can hear very clearly there, she says, as a matter effectively of international law, I believe they will be found guilty of genocide, and believe there is, quote, ample evidence to support that conclusion. But this raises a lot of uncomfortable questions for Elizabeth Warren, because she has supported the Biden policy in terms of how she's voted. She voted to defund the number one aid organization on the ground in Gaza, UNRWA, which has been essential in terms of, at this present moment and previously as well, getting aid to Gazans who are now starving to death. So if it's a genocide, you have aided in that genocidal policy. And she has continued to vote in terms of military aid to Israel. So you can see the discomfort in the way that, we can put this next piece up on the screen. Her spokesperson is trying to walk this back a bit, these comments, and I guess sort of nuanced troll on them. She says, in a Q&A, Senator Warren commented on the ongoing legal process at the International Court of Justice, not sharing her views on whether genocide is occurring in Gaza. In January, the ICJ found that it is plausible Israel has committed acts that violate the Genocide Convention, as the senator said at the mosque. What is far more important than any label that comes out of this legal process is the question of whether it should be the policy of the U.S. to support Israel's actions in Gaza. Senator Warren believes Prime Minister Netanyahu and his right-wing war cabinet have created a massive humanitarian disaster in Gaza, have not taken reasonable steps to protect civilians. As she said at the mosque, it is wrong to starve children within a civilian population in order to try to bend to your will. It is wrong to drop 2,000-pound bombs in densely populated civilian areas. The senator has worked with her colleagues in Congress to push for a ceasefire, the return of hostages, for conditioning aid to Israel, for free flow of humanitarian aid in Gaza, and for movement toward a two-state solution. So, even in the interaction, you could tell that she was uncomfortable with having to actually say the word genocide, but also couldn't really get out of it. So now they're trying to walk it back a bit by saying, oh, this isn't really her personal view. She's just sort of evaluating this process that is unfolding at the International Court of Justice. But I mean, they're the ones that, from a legal perspective, make the determination. So if you think they have ample evidence that this is a genocide, why are you still supporting a Biden administration policy of aiding and abetting this genocide?
The whole thing is very silly in the way that she handles the question. It's like, lady, either say it or don't. Just put your opinion on the table. Stop trying to tap dance around this. Either, you know, you voted for it, defend the vote, say you changed your mind, that you don't believe it, or that you do. This is, I'll be honest, again, I don't use this type of language specifically for this reason. I think international law is fake. I don't think anything can be proved or disproven. She's actually returning to her almost like, did you notice that her law school route of like, well, if you want to look at the legal question, I'm like, well, this isn't a legal question. I mean, I guess it is technically, but it's one of those with no enforcement. You either support the policy or you don't. And it's clear too that she is one where she's trying to square it with, I think, trying to keep some progressive credentials or any of that and all that together. And she's just not giving her straight up opinion, which is actually my biggest takeaway, especially too in terms of clear up. Either if you believe it, then say it, you know, but have the courage to say it. That's all I would say.
I actually think that the fact that an Elizabeth Warren feels pressured to acknowledge that there is ample evidence this is a genocide is proof that the ICJ process has actually mattered. Because, you know, that sort of language, you know, was considered totally outside of the Overton window of mainstream acceptability early on in this conflict. And I do think that South Africa's case, the fact that the ICJ overwhelmingly, including the American judge, by the way, which was kind of shocking, found that there was sufficient evidence here to say, okay, it's plausible this case can move forward. And of course, we've continued to see the evidence of not only what was done in terms of the annihilation, but the way that starvation continues to be used as a weapon of war here has made it very difficult for people like AOC, people like Elizabeth Warren, anyone who sees themselves as being a progressive, as being on the left, as being a humanitarian, to avoid the implications of that. So I actually see it as, you know, consequential. The fact that you have a mainstream United States senator who's, you know, actually now gotten to the left of Bernie Sanders in terms of what he's been willing to say, it is pretty extraordinary. Now, again, it's a little empty given her voting record, but this is toothpaste that Israel can't really put back in the tube. You've now had a United States senator say that you are committing a genocide. I mean, a state that was founded out of the horrors of the Holocaust, obviously a horrifying genocide. And now you're being accused by a senator from your top ally and benefactor of committing a genocide. It is extraordinary. It is it's something I kind of, just like Nancy Pelosi signing on to the letter saying, hey, maybe we should condition aid to Israel. These are things that would have been unthinkable a year ago. And, you know, I don't know how to conclude this, because on the one hand, you think, okay, well, in the future, this is really going to matter in terms of how things have shifted in U.S. public opinion, et cetera. In the short term, I can't say that it's really going to make a difference vis-a-vis Joe Biden and how he conducts himself, because I think he's such a locked-in ideologue. But you know, the language that we've heard throughout this conflict about the way that Israel is becoming increasingly isolated on the world stage, about how they're becoming increasingly estranged from, you know, one of the two major parties in the United States, not necessarily the politicians, but the base. This is all true. And you can ask South Africa, the white apartheid regime of South Africa, how it went for them once they faced a, you know, high level of global estrangement for their apartheid regime and crimes.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.